to the library board in a forum of community representatives to discuss what was wanted and needed from the classroom. One of the important factors that the community representatives all mentioned was that it needed to be a space not only for children, but for everyone to be able to use. This image you're seeing now is the resulting site plan, and this is what we used as our starting tool for building the classroom. And now I'll show you the results of our site plan. This is that same street corner that you saw with the grass earlier, and that's our main sign for the Nature Explorer Center. Here is the inside entryway from the library into the Nature Explorer Center. You can only enter through the library. We wanted it to be a controlled environment so that we didn't have some of the issues with a public area that was totally uncontrolled. So everyone who does enter has to enter through the inside of the library, and the center is only open during library hours. The entrance is located at the back of the library, so we wanted to have a big noticeable tree that people could see from anywhere when they walk in the library. We also used this space to recognize our donors and provide information about the center, which you see there to the right-hand side of the tree. Having a prominent entry feature helps children to stop and focus their attention. It tells them that they're entering a special place, so they don't just run out there without thinking about it beforehand. And this is the continuation of our entryway from the outside, so this is what you would see if you're walking back into the library and you walk through, coming out into the classroom. The first area that you come to when you enter the Nature Explorer Center is the gathering tree. The Nature Explorer certification requires that each of the areas of the classroom be named and have a clearly posted sign. We decided to use fun names for the areas that either had meaning to us or some kind of local relevance. The designation of areas with signs also helps to promote early literacy. The gathering tree provides an area at the entry of the center for teachers or library staff to address a group before and after their time spent in the classroom. It's a good place for giving instructions and expectations, but it's also good for reviewing what was learned in the time spent in the classroom. It can be used as a place for storytelling or sing-alongs, and in addition to its benefits for children, this area can be used for small group meetings and for adults. The next area is the home of the gnome, or the gardening area. This area is designated for annual plantings. Most of the plantings you'll see throughout the classroom are perennials, and everything is pretty small because we're still pretty new. We only opened in October, so unfortunately the plants are pretty small, but they will grow with time. The annual planting area is where the children will actually be allowed to plant 10 plants each year in that tub and flower bed you see. When children are able to plant, care for, and harvest a garden, they learn responsibility and basic life cycle science concepts. The garden can be themed, like a pizza garden with tomatoes, basil, and oregano, or it can just hold a variety of colorful flowers and vegetables. Seeing food growing shows children that food is a natural thing that comes from the earth, and that it doesn't just come from a grocery store. The next area that we come to is Art Island. The largest feature of Art Island is the water wall, which you see here. The trough below the water wall collects water, and children are able to use the natural stone like they would a chalkboard, only using paintbrushes and water instead. The water wall allows children to manipulate the rock and water to make it change. It teaches children about water flow and the properties of natural stone. It also gives them a chance to express their creativity. The one thing that we really like about the water wall is that in the warm weather, the artwork just dries. We don't have any issues of people fighting over who gets to erase it or where they get to put their picture because it will just dry off and they can start fresh. This feature and the art table that you see in the next slide teach art, science, and pre-literacy skills. This is the art table that's also part of Art Island. The art table gives children hands-on experience with different natural samples. In the little green pockets there, we store different kinds of samples that are changed throughout the year. When we opened last fall, we had gourds and corn and small pumpkins in there. Now we have pine cones and shells and seed pods for the children to handle and manipulate into art. The next area is Melody Meadow. This is the music area of the classroom and probably the largest area of our outdoor classroom. This area provides a place where children can make music and dance in an unstructured way. It allows for improvisation and creativity. This area also helps children to learn about sound, pitch, rhythm, and tonality. The stage allows for large motor activity and muscle development. The stage is really the focal point of the Nature Explore Center, and it was designed that way intentionally by the group that worked on the site plan. The stage has electrical plugins, and it will be used for a variety of library programs throughout the year, including summer reading programs. We have a magician, a storyteller. We're planning to do a teen battle of the bands on the stage. We've had a guitarist perform there as well. It's easy to view the stage from anywhere in the Nature Explore Center. It's centrally located, so anywhere you sit, whether it be in the treehouse or in the gathering circle, you can still clearly see the stage. Here you see some children enjoying our musical instruments in Melody Meadow. We have two akambiras, which are the xylophone-like instruments that you see here. We have 4 drums, 2 rhythm frogs, and a variety of handheld instruments like ring sticks, shakers, and dancing scarves. And we keep all those in a storage unit right there next to the instruments. We have a large number of materials so that even when we have large numbers of kids out there, they all have something they can play with at the same time. The akambira, drums, and frogs are mounted at different levels so they can accommodate children of all sizes. The next area is the grassy knoll, which is our large motor play area. This area is designated for bigger and wilder activities like cartwheels, somersaults, running, and active games. This area also doubles as a viewing area for events that take place on the stage. It was our construction manager's idea to name this area the Grassy Knoll, and although myself and some others thought that that had a little bit of an ominous feeling, we decided that the very young children aren't going to understand it, and it may be a teachable moment for older children if the parents decided to explain it. So we did go ahead and name it that in honor of our construction manager. This area here is the Dream Building area, or otherwise known as the building block area. The building block play helps to strengthen visual, spatial, mathematical, and abstract thinking skills. This area is more enclosed and walled off than the rest of the classroom. Since the outdoor classroom is obviously very busy, we wanted to make sure the space was more contained and less likely to be disturbed by children running through and destroying someone else's masterpiece. The floors are a hard surface and the walls are as well, so they can both be used for building. The blocks in the Dream Building area are natural wood-cut blocks in a variety of sizes and shapes. Using natural cut blocks allows children to experience the real texture of wood in their hands, and it also allows them to experiment with building in shapes that typically aren't found in the blocks you would use inside. The next area to come to is the Secret Pathway. This is a more secluded place for people to go and find some quiet time surrounded by natural beauty. This area can include big comfy chairs for reading and relaxing, and a bridge that allows young children a challenging large motor experience that is safe and within their abilities. The plants on the side of the secret path that you see here now are small and low in this picture, but they will grow with some time. They'll grow to be 2 to 3 feet tall, and they will allow children to have a secret place where they can kind of hide, but they're still in full view of a parent that would be standing nearby. The secret pathway is where we have our little free libraries. If you haven't heard of little free libraries yet, I suggest you would go look at their website. It's very interesting, and I provided that in the references slide. These libraries are popping up all over the country, and they allow people to borrow and return books on an honor basis. No library card is required. We have a little free library for adult books and one for children's books, which are pretty distinguishable by their decor and their height. See there. When designing the Nature Explorer Center, it was very important for us to include reading and literacy into the design for very obvious reasons. We're a library. I'm extremely pleased how that has worked out. It seems like every time a parent comes through with their children, they do take out the time to borrow one of those books from the little free library and sit in a chair and read to their children. So we really love seeing that not only are they getting out and playing with their families, but they are taking the time to sit down and read as well. This next area that we're looking at here is called Mulch Gulch, or it's otherwise known as the messy materials area. This area is probably the hardest to explain to adults until they see the children working in it. The area is basically just a large mulch pit with an interesting tree branch in the middle. And then there's a bunch of different lengths of wood and tree cookies in it. Adults tend to look at it and keep walking, but the children know exactly what to do, as you can see here. They get to digging and building and climbing. I've never seen a child go out here and not know what to do with this space, even if their parents don't. From an educational perspective, this area allows children to use their imagination, experiment with a variety of natural objects, practice carrying heavy objects, and feel a sense of accomplishment and personal mastery over their environment. Children with sensory integration challenges benefit the most from this area, and they gain skills in self-control and relaxation after being exposed multiple times. The large motor activity is especially good for those children. The next area we come to is the Sunflower House, or the climbing and crawling area. As children grow and develop, they need to successfully master physical challenges in order to gain self-confidence and a sense of control over their environment. The Sunflower House gives children the opportunity to take these physical challenges, and it also provides opportunity to look at the world from multiple perspectives. The ability to look at from multiple perspectives builds mathematical and visual spatial skills. The construction of the Sunflower House led to a lot of debate within our board because there were concerns about safety standards. And fortunately, we were able to design it so that the entire structure falls within Kansas playground safety standards and does not require any fall zones. As you can see around it, we still have mulch areas around it so that kids aren't leaving straight from the wood onto a hard surface, but that isn't even required by Kansas playground safety standards. In fact, the entire classroom is designed to be safer than your standard school or community playground. This was an important feature for the board, as I mentioned, because they had real concern about liability due to injuries. After speaking with some representatives from the school and the city, we've done everything possible to provide a safe environment, and there isn't much case for negligence or any kind of liability due to an injury. As you can see there in the picture on the right, there is a wheelchair accessible ramp that goes up to the first level of the Sunflower House. We did everything we could to make that outdoor classroom accessible for strollers and the wheelchair bound. The only places that are not wheel-friendly are the secret pathway in the back that we just looked at and the upper levels of the Sunflower House. However, the classroom still remains far more accessible than a standard playground at a school or city playground would be. So that's a nice benefit of having the classroom too. The circular path that you see running in front of the sunflower house is created using loose vines. That's the same material that you would see if you ever go to a national park and you see the go on an accessible trail. That's the same kind of material they use for that. The final feature of our outdoor classroom is our river ramble. It's a shallow recirculating water feature. It allows children to experiment with many different scientific principles, as you can see the kids in these pictures are doing. Children love to experiment with different objects to see which will sink and float. It's also common to see races where the kids try to determine whose leaf or pine cone will make it to the end the fastest. The depth of the water is less than 1 inch at the deepest, so again, there's no risk of drowning or other kind of hazard for the kids using it. The river ramble also features a bubbling rock, which I don't have a picture of here, but it's a great thing for the smallest of our explorers. This feature allows even very young crawling babies to get up close and personal with the flowing water and feel its properties, but it's not quite as a threatening way as the river ramble or maybe the water wall might be. It's also set back a little bit from the river ramble so that little kids don't get trampled by the bigger kids who are having a lot of fun playing. This slide has some of the special features that we added for our own outdoor classroom. The brick you see in the center is part of our storybook path. We have a short brick path that runs in front of the river ramble, and it features the titles of children's books only. This was a way to bring literacy and reading out into the classroom, but it was also a fundraiser for funding the classroom. Each book that is out there is purchased by a donor for $100, and we have a brochure that is kept near the entrance that connects the donor to the book title. So you can take the brochure out with you and match who is the same person that bought your favorite book. We've also talked about using the books in the storybook path for our summer reading programs in the future and having contests of who could read all the books on the storybook path and giving some kind of prize when all those books were completed. The other features you see are just kind of a little sampling of what we did. We really felt that we wanted our outdoor classroom to be a little more whimsical and imaginative than your standard Nature Explore classroom. We wanted children to feel like they're walking into a special place, one that would inspire creativity and imagination, and we feel that some of these extra touches have made that a little more possible. The squirrel was carved out of a donated tree stump. Our local tree cutting service donated a whole lot of the wood that we used out in the outdoor classroom, so that was nice. The carving was done by a local craftsman who gave us his carving rate at a discounted price, and it's named Rocky for one of our former board members. Thought that was just kind of a neat way to honor him. So that's pretty much an overview of our outdoor classroom and the way it was designed to help boost early childhood educational experience. Hopefully, at this point, you're thinking, okay, that looks like fun, and I can see the educational value, but you might be also saying, what does this have to do with the library? So I'm hoping that the next few slides will kind of make that connection of what it does have to do with the library. This is our library's mission statement. The Finney County Public Library, its staff and board of trustees are committed to providing materials, programs, and services that will advance the educational, informational, and recreational needs of our culturally diverse and growing region. Now obviously every library has a slightly different mission statement, but I think you'll be hard-pressed to find a public library with a mission statement that doesn't include anything about education, recreation, materials, or services. So in that way, an outdoor classroom complements any library that has those core features in their mission. These are the PLA strategic planning priorities. So if you've ever been through a strategic planning process for your library, you probably are pretty familiar with these. The ones that I highlighted in the green are the Finney County Public Library's selected priorities that are for our current strategic plan. As you can see, create young readers early literacy. The outdoor classroom obviously supports that priority. Know your community resources and services. That one might be a little bit more of a stretch, but being in a remote area where there aren't a lot of opportunities for family activity and early learning environments, we feel that we have provided a resource for our community, something that is a draw for people. We have field trips coming from surrounding communities up to an hour away that are coming to use our classroom this spring and summer. So we do feel that we've created a new community resource. Satisfy curiosity, lifelong learning, stimulate imagination, reading, viewing, and listening for pleasure, and visiting a comfortable space. These are all pretty obvious fits for our outdoor classroom. So for us, it was very obvious, very natural fit to do an outdoor classroom. Now, if you look at the priorities that are highlighted in blue, I think you can make a pretty good natural argument for those as well on how an outdoor classroom can support these. Some of them more easily than others, but even down to genealogy and local history. We have in our classroom we've taken care to use a lot of natural plants that are local to the area. We have a tree that was taken after the Greensburg tornado came through and destroyed the city. We have one of our fallen logs is from that, and you can see the tornado damage from that. So there are opportunities of tying just about anything into your classroom to teach about your local environment or anything that you would need with that. Now, you happen to be at one of the rare libraries that only includes the white priorities in your planning. You might have a harder case for adding an outdoor classroom, but it's probably still possible if you can get creative enough. So, now I could go on probably for a whole hour just talking about the process we went through and the planning and fundraising, but since I'm limited on time today, I'm going to just touch on a few of the things that I thought were key to the process and necessary for us getting through this. The first and most obvious is probably space. Although there are Nature Explore classrooms that have been built in places as small as an alleyway between two apartment buildings in New York City, you do have to have some space to work with. We were fortunate enough to have 10,000 square feet to work with for our classroom. However, if your library is located in a strip mall or it takes up an entire lot, then an outdoor classroom probably is not going to be a fit at your current location. So that's really one of the biggest limiting factors. You really have to have some kind of space to build a classroom. And I've actually seen places also that they have more parking than they need, and they take over a small amount of that to make the classroom. There really is a lot of flexibility in that area, but you do have to have some kind of space. The second key is need. In our community, as I have kind of touched on already, there was a very big need. However, if you happen to live in an area where you have a wonderful botanical gardens down the road that has its own outdoor classroom, playground next door, and a nature preserve somewhere nearby, an outdoor classroom might not be the right fit. However, a lot of those places also charge. So that is one thing that needs to be taken into consideration. You know, even if you have a great zoo with an outdoor classroom, that's fantastic. You have to consider the fact that most, if not all, families can't afford to go to the zoo all the time. And an outdoor classroom at a library is something that's a free resource for them. So like I said, in our remote community with very few family activities, this has been a great project and a great experience. We have, in southwest Kansas, if you're not familiar with the geography in the area, there aren't very many natural resources. There's no national parks or state parks very close to us at all. There are a few, but they're all at least a 45-minute drive away. So this gives children an experience with nature that's different than the one they would get just by visiting a farm. The third key to the process is community support. We had a tremendous amount of community support for this project from the very startup. We anticipated the fundraising for what we expected to be a $360,000 project would take 2 to 3 years, but because of the great support of our community, we were able to complete the whole project from idea to opening day in just over a year. So that was great. Without the support of your community, it'd be very hard to raise funds for this kind of project, and there probably isn't any reason to. If your community isn't interested in it, why do it? Finally, startup funds. Now this probably isn't as critical as the first three, but for us it was extremely helpful. Although you could start an outdoor classroom fund from nothing, our board was able to designate $70,000 as startup funds, which was tremendously helpful for me with grant writing and even with petitioning different local organizations for their donations, because it showed them that we already had the seed money, we were getting started, and it also showed them that the board was committed. It's oftentimes hard to get grant money for something if you can't show any kind of commitment from your board that the project's definitely going to help. So that was very key for us. Finally, this is just a reference list I provided for you all. I thought if you wanted any more information on anything, these are some great resources. My contact information is listed at the bottom of the slide. Please feel free to contact me at any time with any kind of questions. I'd also be happy to provide examples of the materials and brochures we use for fundraising if anyone would be interested in something like that. But that covers about everything I had. I just would like to, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask. Oh, I see we do have one question here. How did you discover the Nature Explorer group? Actually, that's an interesting story too. We're a family place library, and I had 2 of my staff members who went to family place training at the Long Island, the Middle Country Public Library on Long Island, and they have a Nature Explorer classroom. So that was the first time I'd heard of Nature Explorer in the actual the Arbor Day Foundation project, which is really what gives a lot of the research-based information that makes this classroom a lot more sellable for libraries in the community. So that's where we got the idea, and then we looked on the website and started getting some more information from them. It's Middle Country Public Library. It's the library that has it. I think we're the 3rd library in the country now with a Nature Explorer Center or a Nature Explorer classroom. Their Middle Country Library was the first, and then there's also some of the Rangeview libraries. I know they have one that's open in one of the Rangeview libraries in Colorado, and then ours at Finney County in Kansas. Okay, I've got another question. Is the area open year-round? Yes, with some exceptions. We opened in like I said, we opened at the end of October, so we haven't had a whole year of experience yet, but we did stay open through the winter. We closed when there was significant snow on the ground, just because there's no way to clear paths or anything out there, and the board didn't want any added risk of slip and falls or any kind of injury. But other than that, we do stay open. We have relatively mild winters, but with occasional days that are, you know, warm in the 60s or 50s or 60s, and we had kids out there every time it warmed up a little bit. I don't think a day went by that someone wasn't out there. Sometimes we were surprised that it was very, very cold and they were going out anyway. But I guess the families needed to get those kids out. So, all right, got another one. Is there a way to recreate any of the activities indoors? Sure, I'm sure there is. You would probably want to have a designated space that was really separated off from the rest of the library, because there really are messes that go along with it. I don't know. I haven't really put a whole lot of thought into doing a lot of it indoors, but I'm sure there are some opportunities. For example, the nature art table would be something that's really easy to replicate inside. The natural wood building blocks would be something that could be replicated inside. If you had a totally separate area where noise wasn't an issue, you know, musical instruments and those kind of things would be easy to do inside as well.
Aaron, this is Sarah.
Okay, I see. Where do you get natural supplies for the activities? I mean, the things that kids play with, pine cones, blocks, etc. Some of it is just, we have some pine trees on our property anyway, and we just go collect pine cones and use those. We've ordered some of it through Nature Explorer. They have a resource book where you can get like the natural wood cut blocks and things like that. But we also have a lot of those blocks that are out there are just from fallen branches that someone's just cut up with a chainsaw. So that's how we get our tree cookies and things like that. But they are available for purchase through Nature Explorer and through some other websites. I believe we ordered some of the stuff even from Amazon. So.
Aaron, this is Diane. It looks like you're doing a good job keeping up with the text chat anyway.
Okay,
but there's another question now about a really good one about something related.
Is there a separate policy for child supervision in the outdoor space? And is there a staff member outdoors at all times? No, we don't have a staff member outdoors at all times. What we do have is security cameras that cover the whole space that are on the front desk computers, and it's all web-based security cameras, so whenever someone's at work, we can see it. There's display monitors in the back room, so we can see what's going on outside. Making the rounds outside has become part of regular library duties, just like walking around the library and helping patrons is. So there are people out there frequently, but there's not someone out there the entire time it's open. As far as the policy goes, it's pretty much the same policy that applies in the library applies outside. We have a policy that children 8 and under have to be supervised, so the same goes for the outdoor space. They can't just drop off a 3-year-old and let them be. We enforce those policies the same way as we would elsewhere. Okay, I see one more here. How do you measure success? So, to this point, because we haven't been open for very long, the only thing we've been able to do is pretty much tracking door count, which has been incredible, really. We've been surprised. Between October and the end of December, we had over 1,500 people use the space. and that was during the coldest part of the year. So moving forward, we plan on tracking programming and the extra events that go out there. We will have the space available for booking for educational events through the schools, and different educational groups are allowed to book the area. So we'll keep track of that, how many times it's booked and the amount of people using it. And then also anecdotal stories. We're trying to make sure we have a lot of pictures and keeping records of what people say and things that we hear people, you know, when we hear kids learning something new, we kind of just try to keep notes of that. Okay, what community groups have wanted to visit the center? We've had some amazing requests. We actually just finished writing up our policy of our youth policy because we had been just relying on library youth policy, but we have actually had people request to have weddings, baby showers, photo sessions, just about anything you can imagine out in the center. What we've decided is that they can do that, but we're not going to close the place down for them to have their event. So people can come and use it and have a wedding, but they have to understand that there might be a kid playing a instrument behind them during the wedding if that's what they want to do. As far as organized community groups, our garden club has used it already. We've given several tours for philanthropic groups, and but primarily schools. Our early childhood center has been here. We have a number of tours lined up for the spring for schools from Garden City and the surrounding areas to come out and use the classroom. Actually, my son's preschool is going to do a field trip here too. So preschool is mostly schools, but some other odd things out there too. What was the total cost? Our total cost of the project ended up being just under $300,000. We had planned for some inflation with the project that we didn't end up needing because it didn't take near as long as we planned to raise the funds to get started. So we actually came in under budget. Now, you know, $300,000 can sound like a lot, or it can sound like a little, depending on your perspective. But there, you know, this is also a 10,000 square foot place, and we didn't scrimp on much. We wanted something nice. We pretty much went for it. So we were able to do a lot of nice things with that. There's definitely ways you could do it for a lot less cost than that, and you could probably do it for a lot more cost if you wanted it to be really fancy and large. So, how do we schedule community groups? Right now, we are only open for educational purposes. They can only book on Mondays. The board was very clear they wanted the Nature Center to be open for people who just come by anytime. They don't want it closed often. So we're only scheduling on Mondays, and we schedule them through our events calendar, just like we do our meeting rooms. So we basically added it as an extra meeting room. And we keep track of it through our events calendar like we do our programming in the meeting rooms. We will not host, a question, will you host private birthday parties? We're not hosting anything like that. We haven't yet had it happen, but we've had people talk about, well, can our kid come here and have a party? Yes, they can, but it will not be private. It will still be open to the public. The board decided to not do any kind of parties or anything like that because we really want it to be a public place that people can use, and it's open all the time. And with the amount of requests we've had for booking, we were afraid that it would turn off families who just want to come use it, because we would be closed so much of the time for private events. So no private events unless they're educational. Do we have older children trying to use the space? Teens? Yes, we do. We've come across some issues with that. You know, the biggest probably being the tweens, which is actually who we have the most problem with in the library also. For some reason, they seem to just run amok all the time. But, you know, we have figured there's been a few small things that have been broken. We've been trying to, we have a budget, an ongoing budget, and for continuing expenses, because this isn't the kind of thing that you can just build and walk away from. The supplies by nature are going to break down. You know, there's things that will just have to be replaced because they're natural items. Everything out there isn't made of plastic that sticks around forever. So we do have, you know, money budgeted for each year to make replacements and repairs. But truly, it hasn't been that big of an issue. The teams that go out there are usually pretty responsible. It's probably that middle age range, those tweens that cause the most trouble. But it hasn't been so much that that it's really caused a major problem. So we've kept, that's been pretty manageable. It's been no worse than maintaining them inside the library, I don't think. Do you have a limit to how many people can be in the area at one time? We don't. We've talked about the possibility of doing that. We've looked into having, you know, the fire marshal come out and give us a limit. But there's what we came down to the decision is that it's a very hard thing to determine, because if you have an event where all the kids are sitting, where you have, you know, we can easily fit 300 to 400 people. We had 300 kids at a story time last year that we did out there in the summer before everything was complete. But the kids were all sitting, and they were all relatively young and not taking up a lot of space. Now, if that many people were coming for an event where there was a lot more physical activity, it would have been ridiculously crowded and hard to deal with. How we decided to handle that was by putting in a clause in our policy clause that if the library staff determined it was unsafe at any time, that they could make decisions on how many people were allowed. So they could shut it down if there's too many people or whatever. But because the types of events that can go on out there are so varied, it's really hard to put a number on how many can be there, because in some cases it's a lot more than others. I hope that made sense. What was the most difficult part in implementing this project? I would say the most difficult part for me personally was managing we did have a construction manager during the construction, but even with having that construction manager, the day-to-day work of picking what color is this, where does this go, and looking at bids and all the different things that went into it, you know, I would compare it. I have never been through a building project, but it's probably very similar. I mean, during the construction, I spent a good part of my day, every day, involved in the construction, even though we had a construction manager. So I do think that, you know, it takes some commitment. It has to be something you really want, but, you know, it's something I really firmly believe in and I think is a wonderful addition to our community. So I did survive that summer of getting it built, and I'm still here talking about it, so apparently it wasn't too terrible. What is the most successful program, activity, craft, etc. that you've done in the space? That's pretty hard to answer. We are just really going into our busy season for the space. We haven't done a whole lot of programming. You know, we had a grand opening event, 2 grand opening events at the end of October, which were hugely successful and wonderful. We had a private donor event for the night before, and it was at within the evening, and we had about 100 people attend that, and that was a more formal event. And it was really nice to see all these people who had either donated or worked on the project get to enjoy it and see what the completed project looked like. And then the following morning, we did our public grand opening, and we had over 300 people go through in the first hour. And that was quite fantastic too, because it, you know, really put all the work and everything into perspective to see the kids out there enjoying it. So I'd say those are our most successful programs so far, only because it's really been winter most of the time that we've been open. We're planning on doing a good portion of our summer reading activities and events out there this summer, but we don't have a huge amount of experience with programming yet. If you were doing this project again, would you change anything? If so, what? Nothing major. I think, you know, we're very proud of it, our center, and we love it, and the community does. The only thing I can think of, and it's kind of a petty little thing, but we have colored stones in the gathering area that we've tried to seal in, and they really aren't sticking, and we're probably going to have to redo that area. But it's a very small portion, and it's just going to require concreting them in and putting colored stones on the top because they're ending up everywhere. So that's really the only thing, and that's really more of a construction detail than anything major. But it is hard, you know, it's hard to predict how everything will hold up to the public, and we did everything we could to try to secure everything, but there's still a few things that, like those stones, that really just aren't going to work out. So we just have to fix it and move on. Okay. The kid in me just has to know, does the little door in the tree on the Storybook Path open? No, it doesn't. That's a gnome door. They only come out during, you know, the night when you're not there. So you can't open it, but the gnomes can. How cold does it get in Garden City? We definitely had some below 0 days this year. That's, you know, we do have that happen. We turned off the water, for obviously the water features were off through the winter. We just turned them back on this week. But everything else was still open. So we did have to clear out the pumps of the water and do that for the winter because they would freeze. It does get below freezing. But it's interspersed with nicer days. It's not, we didn't have near the winter that Chicago or the Midwest had this year. We don't get that kind of snow. We have a lot less snow than some areas. We're very arid and dry, but it does get cold in the winter and very hot in the summer. Do you think Nature Explorer would help other library projects? Can you elaborate on that? I'm not sure what kind of projects you mean.
Erin, this is Sarah. Do you hear me?
I could hear you talking about. I could hear you.
Erin, can you hear me now?
You're talking the whole group, so back to you.
If others can hear me, please put an exclamation point in the chat. This is Sarah.
I'm not getting any sound. Oh, here we go. I'm sorry if you've covered upkeep and I missed it somehow. How much do you have budgeted to maintain the space and how much upkeep is required? We have planned for a $5,000 upkeep budget each year. I think that will be more than sufficient. That will cover having everything from done. We plan on using a local garden center to come in the spring and fall and do a cleanup and fertilizer and everything that needs to be done and trimming the plants and everything that needs to be done to keep the plants healthy. In addition to that, we budget for new blocks, new small instruments, that kind of thing. I mean, that kind of stuff walks away. It just does. It's part of the project. Part of the nature of a thing like this. Some of the small instruments get broken and we replace them. The blocks have to be replaced over time. As far as the larger structures, there isn't much upkeep at all. We'll in a few years we'll have to go back and start replacing things where the boards have gotten old or things like that. But the main part of budgeting for upkeep is replacing the kind of expendable items that are the toys and things that are out there, and maintenance of the grounds. So by having that garden center come out and keep everything looking nice, the investment we put into all the plantings won't go bad. I thought Nature Explorer gave you advice and maybe some money. If so, do you think they would help other libraries? Yes, they are happy to work with libraries in some ways. Unfortunately, they did not give us money. What we did get through them is they're the ones who came out and drew the site plan for us. We did have to pay a fee for that. It was pretty nominal though, and compared to paying a local landscape architect to do a site plan, it was very reasonable. They also did some training. They do site plan consultations all over the country for schools, libraries, anyone who's interested, but there is a little bit of a fee for that. As far as, so yeah, they would definitely be willing to help other libraries, and if you go to their website, which I have here on this reference list, you can get more information about that.
Well, Erin, thank you very much for sharing your very compelling story, and congratulations on your great success. We really appreciate your sharing all the details, and thank you especially for your phone number and your contact information, so those of us who are interested in more can get in touch with you. Next week, you'll be receiving a SurveyMonkey evaluation form from this webinar. We'll also give you information on how you can access an archived copy. Please complete the evaluation and return it to us so that we can continue our efforts to offer relevant webinars that spur creative thinking and actions like Erin's. Special thanks for today's webcast to Daniel Martin, Dominican's Creative Digital Specialist, and Diane Foote, the GSLIS Assistant Dean. I also wish to thank Dana Bracchia, Regional Manager for Library Systems and Services, for bringing Erin's project to my attention. We certainly hope that the information you've received today will be helpful and will incite you to try new things, especially nature classrooms. All good wishes. Have a good day.